I ended up going to A&E and my liver was failing. How positive can we be about this while still being realistic? I don't have to be that person I plan to be.
Today I'm talking with Frankey, who's achieved something incredible: drug-free remission. Let's get into it. How did you actually find out that you had bowel disease?
I had to go to the emergency room in India and I tried lots of antibiotics and treatments for infection when I just didn't get any better. They started to think it might not be an infection, so I got sent for a sigmoidoscopy and that came back inconclusive. So they tried loads more stuff. They still didn't find anything. So in 2018, I had a colonoscopy and that's when they found the ulcers and I got a formal diagnosis of Crohn's disease.
So during the gap that you had between getting symptoms and your diagnosis, like what sort of things were you dealing with on a daily basis?
I had a lot of urgency. I was going to the bathroom at least 10 times a day. I know some other people with Crohn's can go a lot more. That was the worst kind of time for me. I had a lot of abdominal pain. I found I couldn't really walk very much because my abdominal pain would have me doubled over. And I would get really nauseous. So I'd end up having nothing but ginger tea and ginger biscuits all day. I would get really bad mouth ulcers, really bad joint pain, and just incredible fatigue. I did my teacher training at the time because I assumed I was going to get better because I didn't know that I had a lifelong illness at the time. The fatigue was just absolutely crazy.
So you touched upon it just there. You said you thought you was going to get better. Like, what did you actually think was going on? Did you think you just had an ongoing flu or something? Like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, that's right. I knew I'd obviously had food poisoning and I just assumed I wasn't getting rid of the bug, but the bug was still there. And once I got rid of that bug, I would go back to normal. And obviously that never happened.
Yeah, I had a period like that myself when I was waiting for to see a specialist really. And for me, I thought I was just dying of bowel cancer because with colitis, I was getting a lot of bleeding and that. So I know what that uncertain period of not knowing what's going on is like. It's really horrible, mentally. And speaking of that, who did you turn for support? Who did you talk to during this time?
So I spent a lot of time with my nan. She grew up with colitis. She's been in remission for decades. Just having somebody around who is very particular about their diet really helped because initially I really struggled to find anything I could eat. And then I was living with my mum and my stepdad, so they were incredible. It was like being a kid again because my stepdad would do all my washing and all my cooking, and so I didn't have to worry about any of those sorts of things in terms of looking after myself. And then my dad helped me out a lot with taking me to appointments and things like that, and he's quite medically interested, so he would do a little bit of background research and come up with these wild and wacky theories and treatments and things.
What medications were you given when you first got your diagnosis?
I've been on so many medications. The first lot of medication I was on was just different types of antibiotics. And I also had to go to the emergency room in India. So I was also given IV fluid and different types of antibiotics. When I came back, I tried a whole different round of antibiotics because I didn't realize they use different antibiotics in India to they do in the UK. So I had to try a load more again. Before I got put on steroids, I was queried right from the beginning. Basically, as soon as I came home, it was queried whether it could be Crohn's because of the family history. And my abdominal pain was really severe. And actually on the NHS website, it recommends antidepressants for abdominal pain. So I went on a serotonin reuptake inhibitor just for my abdominal pain, and that was really successful. Then I went on steroids, so prednisolone, had a reaction to that after a long time of being on it. I went on to budesonide. I've been on Camtasia. I've been on Oxtasia. I tried azathioprine, which made my liver fail, which sounded really, really scary. But the doctors assured me that the liver is really good at bouncing back. So I just stopped taking the tablets that day. And literally by the end of the next day, I felt a lot better. So that's when I finally started biologics. Started on Humira, which was great, but too expensive for the NHS. So I got switched to Imraldi until lockdown. I really struggled with the Imraldi applicator, and I got to the point where I just couldn't do it anymore. So then I got switched over to Angivita. Now I am completely drug-free.
You're drug-free? Oh, that's amazing.
So I've been in remission for about 2 years. So my scans actually showed some healing of the ulceration. Then I was getting quite anxious about getting COVID while on immunosuppressants, and my specialist said that he was happy for me to try a drug holiday as long as I had plenty of checkup. So I was having 2 monthly or 3 monthly checkups for a while, and then after a year of a drug holiday, all my labs were still great. So now I just get checkups bloods every 3 months and yearly checkups.
What processes have you learned to navigate through life since you've had IBD? What sort of changes have you had to make that you wouldn't have had to have done without the IBD?
Yeah, I think it's something that's so hard to explain to people, and people who don't experience IBD, I say that it literally affects every aspect of your life in ways you wouldn't think about. From changing the toothbrush I use, because I get mouth ulcers, I can now only use a soft toothbrush. And it's just those little things you'd never think of. For me, the biggest thing is managing my fatigue. It's learning when to say no. Your time and your energy is so valuable. You can't waste it on people you are going to add something to your life. Really prioritizing what you want to get out of your time, and knowing that you only have so many spoons in a day. So you have to let some people down.
How does diet play into managing your fatigue levels? And also, how has your diet changed as well with your diagnosis?
I started out on the white and light diet when I first came back to the UK. It's the most boring thing. You can only have things that are white and light, like rice and chicken and potatoes. It's fine for about a week, and then you go, I really need something else. Also, quite quickly found some trigger foods for me. So I can't eat red meat, I can't eat chilies and fish. Those were all things I could do fine with before, but now just don't agree with me. When I got referred to gastro, I also got referred to the dietitian, and he put me on the low FODMAP diet, and I follow that not as strictly as you need to. I follow it quite loosely now. So now I don't eat wheat, and I avoid some of the other high fructose.
Say there was someone who was just beginning their journey with IBD, and they were looking at diet, and they were just like, what do I eat? What would you suggest they start trying to do?
The big thing I would say, and it's something our support group do a lot, is see your doctor. They get referred to a nutritionist because they are incredible. I would say change things little as you can, one thing at a time, because one thing I learned doing the low FODMAP is lots of things actually cross over. And so you might think you're allergic to one thing, but actually it's something else. So for example, I tried a gluten-free diet, and that didn't help me because it turns out it's actually the sugars that I can't tolerate. So just try one thing at a time. But also, rice is generally pretty safe for most people.
I think that's really good advice. I also want to just elaborate on that it's also good from a habit standpoint, doing it one thing at a time. It makes it easier to make those changes incrementally. I'm wondering, what strategies have you learned to use to manage your stress levels?
So I went to a quite drastic, quit my job and start my own business. That's not going to work for everybody. That made the biggest difference for me, and how much contact time I'm going to have in a day. I have a lot of jobs where the only person I'm accountable to is myself. So if I know I'm just tired, I don't want to deal with this today, but I can push that to a Saturday morning and it doesn't matter. I think the other thing that has really helped, I only put 3 things on a day, even if one of those things is something that has to be done and doesn't seem that big, like I really need to tidy up downstairs. That's one of my jobs. There's only 2 other spaces that can be filled. So if someone wants to meet me for lunch, that's space 2. I decided I'm going to watch a movie with my boyfriend, that's space 3. If a friend then texts me and says, do you want to go out and grab a drink? No, my spaces are filled, and we'll have to go to another day.
You've done quite a courageous thing to quit your job and start your own business. I think a lot of people would find that extremely stressful. So I've got to commend you for that. I really like what you said about setting your own hours to what works for you. That's something I've been doing myself as well through my work, doing it at home. And yeah, I think we're on the same page in that regard. What do you think the biggest challenge that you've faced so far with your IBD?
I think it's the adapting. I think it's realizing that you're not going to be the person you were before IBD, and you're not going to have the future you expected. And that doesn't mean that future can't be great, but it does mean that it's going to be limited in a way it wasn't before. I definitely think there's a grieving process there. You planned your future without having IBD, and so you have to let that go and grieve for that future, and then you can go, well, what am I going to achieve instead? And it can still be wonderful, but I think that's the most challenging bit, is letting go of opportunities in the future you expected to have.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're touching on there is acceptance, and just accepting this is who you are and this is how you're going to have to live life now. And like you said, it doesn't mean it can't be a bad life. You just got to do things a different way, and you can still do great things. How has having IBD affected your relationships? And I know you mentioned earlier that if your fatigue levels are too high, or you've done your 3 things a day, you're just going to not go out with your friends in the evening. Has that strained any relationships that you've had?
I wouldn't say it's strained them, but I think it's made me more fussy about my friendship. I think it's probably made me a bit less tolerant for people who are more kind of fair weather friends or aren't going to be compassionate. I have a lot of friends now who are the sort of friends where you see them once or twice a year and you still have that amazing relationship when you pick it up. And I really value those, because it means I can not have to stress about booking them in, but know that we still have that really close relationship.
Have you ever been trying to explain your condition to someone and they just don't understand it?
Yeah, I think that happens quite a lot. It's hard to relate if you haven't been there. It's one of the things about an invisible illness. I'm a very bubbly, active person. I can come over with fatigue very quickly, but also it can be very low level. So I can engage and I can, run around after my nephews and I can go on a walk, but my social meter at that point will be very low because I am feeling fatigued inside. And to someone who's never experienced fatigue, it's almost impossible to explain because it's not feeling tired. I also think that there's not that compassion to know how it can affect you emotionally, but also when you are new to having IBD and all the change and disruption and all that grief for your future self is very challenging. Again, if you've not experienced it, I'm not sure it's easy to relate to at all.
Yeah, I understand what you mean about the sort of social fatigue. Like you say, I still got the energy to maybe go out for a walk or something, but it's almost like my mind is just shut down and I just need to isolate myself for a little bit. How do you feel about you've explained it to someone and they give you some unsolicited advice that it's not some advice that you want to follow, but they really think they're trying to help you?
The have you tried aloe vera, it'll cure you sort of advice. I find that frustrating, but I know that they're trying to help. It comes from a good place. I also think that there are the cliches of the aloe vera will cure you, have you tried yoga, and all of that. But there is a big holistic side to treatment that isn't necessarily the traditional treatment, but is still recommended. Even my nurses recommend a lot of holistic options. Sometimes it will come across as a bit MLME pyramid scheme-y, but actually there is something behind it that makes me go, you know what? Actually, I think I will have a look at that.
Yeah, those sort of holistic approaches, something I've been trying to explore more recently. Something I've been looking into is just mindfulness and just trying to bring more peace to my mind. How much do you suffer with anxiety?
I've always suffered with anxiety a bit, but I really, really struggled over COVID. I had a real anxiety around getting ill on immunosuppressant. So I don't know if you'd have been the same, but I was shielding and I lived on my own. So I was completely isolated for 13 weeks without seeing another soul, which was quite challenging to say the least. That has been a real struggle, but I've actually been working on EFT recently, which is kind of an alternative therapy in itself, and that's really helped. And previously, I actually went to a chronic illness therapy group, which was really beneficial, and that was through the NHS. So to anybody who's going through anxiety and depression, I would absolutely reach out.
I didn't know you could get a group through the NHS. The closest thing I've experienced to that is when more recently the infusion unit I go to, I'm on infliximab and I go every 8 weeks to the infusion unit. They took away their COVID restrictions, and suddenly I can see everyone that sat around me, and we're all just talking about our Crohn's and colitis with each other, and it was a really nice experience. So yeah, what was the group that you did with the NHS like? Was it similar to that?
So the group was for anyone diagnosed with a chronic illness who is struggling with anxiety. So nobody else there had IBD. I don't think we even discussed what people's illnesses were, because that wasn't really relevant what we were trying to achieve. But it was an 8-week course, and we met in a hall. This was before COVID. We just identified things that were important to us, that we valued in ourselves or wanted to improve in ourselves. That was kind of where we identified this idea that you are grieving for this future. And that's been really beneficial to me, to know that I don't have to be that person I plan to be, but it's also okay to be upset that that person isn't gonna ever exist. And then what we valued about ourselves, that we still continue to improve or respect despite our chronic illness.
How has having a chronic illness shaped your perception of yourself?
It's really interesting, because I think what having a chronic illness has done is, rather than make me aware of what I am, I think it's made me more aware of bad things that I'm not. I have had a colleague call me flaky for leaving a job or not doing things which I have made the decision to leave because of my own well-being. So knowing that I'm not flaky, which I think if before I'd have got Crohn's, I would have gone, oh my goodness, am I flaky? Is that me? Knowing I'm not selfish, because I have to really push myself to put myself first.
I was having a conversation with someone recently, and we was talking about boundaries, and I think that's actually what you've been describing there. You're actually listing the boundaries that you're not willing to cross to maintain your health and your well-being, really. And people trying to cross those boundaries is just gonna make you unhealthy. Have you learned any key lessons from your nan? You said she's been in remission since before you were born.
I don't know. We haven't really had the opportunity to talk about her IBD so much. My nan's actually got Parkinson's. Her health has been primarily concerned with that. I think what I took away from my time with her is doing the things that make you calm and happy. I have a really vivid memory of being really ill, but I wanted to make a cake. I've always done baking with my nan, and I was getting her stool, and she had this tiny kitchen in her flat. Getting a stool and putting it right in the middle of the kitchen, and so I could reach every single counter, because I was in so much pain that I couldn't stand up straight, but she still wanted to make it so I could bake. I just think that making it so that I could still do something I really wanted to do was a really valuable lesson, especially at that time when I was so poorly.
I think that there is tremendous value in doing things and proving to yourself that you can do these things whilst you feel so awful, really. Like, what would you say to someone who's sat there right now? They might be just in lots of pain, and they've got these things that they want to do, aspirations, but they just don't feel like they've got the hope to do it.
There's one phrase I live by, especially when I'm feeling low emotionally as well as physically, and it's anything worth doing is worth doing badly. If you can't have a shower, at least wash your face. I get a real sensory thing about brushing my teeth. So if I can't use my electric toothbrush for 2 minutes, at least I'm going to use my manual one. But that can apply to baking. If you want to bake a cake, but you don't think you're going to be able to spend the hour that it takes to get all the stuff out and go to the shops and all of this, go to the co-op, grab a pre-mixed one, and do it badly. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly.
Yeah, I really like that phrase, because it gives you like a stepping stone. because you could do it badly for a little while and then even just start doing it slightly better with the same energy levels, really, and progress from there. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions that the general public have about IBD? What are they misunderstanding?
It's just bad IBS. I actually, unfortunately, managed to have both, and they both suck. But my IBS is always manageable. My IBD has got to the point where I am hospitalized for a week because I can't move and I'm in so much pain. I also think everybody always thinks of the toileting side of things, especially in the recent years. That is a very minimal part of it. Yes, I need to know where a bathroom is. Yes, I prefer to use a disabled bathroom for privacy, but for me, the fatigue is by far the biggest symptom of Crohn's. And I think that gets forgotten about by people who don't have it or have a loved one with it.
What advice would you give yourself back when you didn't know what was going on and then when you was diagnosed? What would you tell yourself?
Rest more, be kind to yourself. You try and carry on exactly as you were. It doesn't have to be Crohn's. If you're ill, you're ill. Rest. Look after yourself.
What gives you hope?
Looking back at your silver linings are such an important thing. I have been really lucky going into remission, and my drug holiday has turned into just being drug-free. There are things that look really bad and then it works out for the better. So I had liver failure from a drug, which sounds really scary, but that let me get onto the drug that got me into remission. I've been very lucky to have a drug-free remission, but that is really uncommon. Lots of countries don't even do drug holidays. I don't want anyone to listen to this and feel like they're disheartened because they need medication. Is what it's there for. I think that's really important to bear in mind, that I am the exception to the rule and it's not something to even necessarily aim for, although we're all aiming to be completely cured once this cure comes around, of course. What is one lesson you've learned to help you with your IBD journey?
It's like you said, it's setting up those boundaries, really. Because I've given myself more time to rest, give myself time to do things, and I get like a lot of anxiety. I guess it's just trying to remember that you're okay, really. Even if you feel you can't keep going, you are okay and things will get better. I think that's the main thing for me. Yeah,
I think definitely the positivity makes so much difference. I think that's why I found the emotional freedom therapy so useful, because it was a complete mind shift of how positive can we be about this while still being realistic, and that really helped me with my anxiety.
I think community is really important as well, because like you were saying during COVID, I hardly went out, and I hardly still do go out, and I only came on immunosuppressants after COVID, and after that I was almost terrified to go and speak to anyone and do anything with anyone outside, really. Over this year I've been reaching out to people and trying to just engage more in the community, and I think that is a really healing thing. Even if you are in a flare, I think just sharing how you feel and finding people to talk to who are in a similar situation to you, not even necessarily a similar situation, but just people to talk to and share with, is actually like really positively, it's so hugely healing, really, isn't it?
Definitely. I've had 2 people I know be diagnosed with Crohn's in the past few years, and the first thing I said, get on the Discord. Get on the Discord. Everyone there will be so lovely and helpful.
Yeah, the Discord for me, when I was in hospital, I was spending pretty much the whole day either talking to people in the hospital or typing to people on Discord. Like, it did get me through some hard times.
If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening to the whole of this podcast. If you like this content, please hit the subscribe button and like for more content. If you have a story you'd like to share with me, feel free to get in contact and we can arrange a meeting.